Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions, and today we're going to explore some wonderful things. I have an amazing guest with me. I'm so grateful that Bee Doyle has joined me on the Learning Love podcast. Bee, let's just jump right in and let's tell everybody who you are, what you do, a little bit about your journey, where it all began.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. And I am Bee Doyle, a retired U.S. Army sergeant, combat veteran, nurse practitioner, turned spiritual guide and intuitive healer. That's a mouthful.
That is. And so you were a combat medic in Afghanistan.
Yes.
And a lot of people will be listening to this on audio. I'm sure you've heard this before. You are not the stereotype of what a person thinks of as a combat medic.
Yes.
And so let's start there. What was your experience in Afghanistan?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was deployed, attached to the 25th Infantry Division. We were deployed to a place near the Pakistan border in the Coast Province, operating out of Forward Operating Base Salerno. It was a very active area, being along the border of Pakistan. We took a lot of enemy fire, RPGs every day, and saw a lot. I was there for about 11 months, and it was an intense experience. I think intense is a good word to sum it all up.
Yeah. Scary, frightening.
Yes, all of the above.
All of that, yeah. And traumatic.
Absolutely.
And that experience, I'm sure you did a lot of good there. I'm sure you were vital in a lot of people's lives at that point as a combat medic and as a nurse practitioner. You're literally saving lives. But even if you're doing good things in the world, that can take a toll on you.
Absolutely.
And so you experienced that trauma. What was that like when you came back?
Yeah, I was the ripe age of 25. I spent my 25th birthday in Afghanistan, and coming home was incredibly challenging for many different reasons. One of the main reasons was, I felt like that work was the most important thing that I would ever do. And nothing, in the world could compare to that. Yeah. And so I was faced with that. I just done the most important thing that I could ever do. And I'm only 25 years old, and all the trauma that wasn't necessarily named at the time, but I was essentially dropped back into the civilian world and expected to somehow function normally. I was carrying a lot. And, as many veterans do and trauma survivors do, I turned to alcohol and different substances I didn't have the verbiage for that at the time, but, I was essentially numbing and trying to stuff things down and not ready to really deal and face those wounds.
And that's something that so many people face, that when you are doing something good with your life and you're helping people and you are a hero, you think, well, if I do everything right, everything's going to work out. If I contribute to the world and I use my talents and I do what I'm called to do and I make a difference and I bring some good into the world, even in a terrible situation, then everything should go well for me. Put good in, I should get good out. And that's not always how life works. You do come home and you wonder, what now? Even if you've done good things, you wonder, what am I doing next? And the trauma of that. And we hold a lot of that, don't we? That a lot of that trauma, even if we can go on to a good life, there's a lot that gets held in us. And as you said, we want to numb that for reasons we don't always know. We just need to find a way of numbing. And so many people have turned to drugs and alcohol to try to do that. It's extremely common, but it doesn't work. So what was your experience once you were in that, turning to alcohol and things of that nature? I'm assuming that made things worse.
Absolutely. Yeah. I certainly hit a point of what I would call sort of rock bottom. I was drinking heavily and ended up in a psychiatric facility facing big questions. I really was at a point in my life that I wasn't sure I wanted to be on this planet anymore. Yeah. It's like when you feel like the most meaningful thing in your life has already passed you by, what is there to really live for? On the exterior, I was doing all the things. I was still trying to continue my education and getting back into the nursing work, trying to find meaning and a way to still give back. But deep down inside, something wasn't there, you know?
And I think that's one of the things that we've created in our society is that we are judged so much by what we do. And what have we done lately? Even if you've done great things in the past and you're celebrated for what you did, it's what are you doing now?
Yeah.
And it's always measured by accomplishment. And I think that's a terrible disservice that we have created in our culture, that we are valuable just by who we are, just because we exist.
Mm-hmm.
We need no other reason to be valuable other than we exist, that we are just human beings. That is not taught. That's not what we talk about. We're always asking, what did you do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's fine to hear the stories and to celebrate and to learn. But at some point we have to learn we're just valuable in who we are.
Yeah.
Was that something that you had to learn along the way?
Absolutely. You know, especially I will say as humans, but especially as women, there are so many pressures put upon us. You know, it's like we're doing so much. And I often say we're human beings, not human doings, right? In our nature, sometimes we're supposed to just be. And I never allowed myself that time to even process what I had been through. And this feeling like I need external validation. And so I'm always seeking it from outside myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge pivotal point in my healing journey when I started to understand and really come to this knowing, not a belief, a knowing deep in my core and my soul that, you know, we're all inherently beings of love and light, and this is who we are. It's our birthright.
And that's, as we talk about on this show, learning love, people always pick up on that word love, but it really is about learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's about growing into that. It doesn't always come natural. Sometimes we think that love and that place of being in love with ourselves, with other people, is just something that happens naturally, and it's not. It's a learned skill.
Absolutely.
And especially when we've been through trauma, we have to learn and relearn what love is, and especially how to love ourselves and how to appreciate just who we are in our own existence. That's a learned process. That doesn't come natural. And sometimes you do have to hit rock bottom. If you've hit rock bottom, that's not a tragedy. That is the beginning of healing. It feels like a tragedy. It's horrible to go through, but that's sometimes the best thing that ever happened to you. Those moments like you describe of you're just not sure you want to be here anymore. That is a moment where if you make the decision you're going to stay and do something else, that's the beginning of that healing. So you have gone through this trauma. You've gone through this rock bottom. You've gotten the help. You've gone to the psychiatric unit. You've gotten help for all of this. So let's talk about your healing journey. And it is a journey. It's not, and I imagine it's still going on.
Absolutely.
It always does. You don't arrive
Right.
at these things. And that's another misconception that someday I'm going to be better. No, you're always on the journey of healing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what that looks like for you.
Sure, absolutely. And I love what you said about it being a journey and not a destination or a place that we arrive. I think it's like if we have it all figured out and all of a sudden we're healed, then again, we're faced with that question. Well, then what's the point of life, right?
Right.
I'm a seeker. If
Yeah,
you could
absolutely.
tell, it's like, what's the next thing? But, you know, my healing journey, I was doing everything that looked right on paper, doing the prescriptive therapies, talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of these, what I would call like top-down approaches, trying to sort of fix my brain because I thought that was the problem. It's something in my brain that's really going wrong, making me feel this way. And, you know, as I came into my journey and it's like, well, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working. One of the first things that I tried that felt a little bit unconventional or sort of like outside the VA norms was acupuncture. I still am not sure if I have words to really fully describe what happened during that session, but it was like I was in my body again for the first time. And what I came to realize after going through this journey is it's about rediscovering and making these pathways for safety in the brain. You know, if you are so unsafe in your body that you're triggered by the mere thought of talking about the experiences, then of course talk therapy is not going to help.
Right.
So that's what I really feel passionate about now and trying to empower people to understand is that, you know, without those little safety pathways, that glimmer of hope in the brain, then we're, you know, that's our starting point.
Yeah, I think your journey, and as you said, a lot of the things that you've gone through didn't have mainstream names at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because you went through this several years ago, but I think you have discovered through your journey what is now being really focused on in counseling and in psychology is that how we hold trauma in our bodies, that it's not just a mind thing. It's not a top down, as the phrase that you use, which I love. It's not a top down thing. It is really held in our bodies. And one of the emphasis, not really a catchphrase, it's more of an emphasis in psychology and counseling is the regulation of the nervous system. And that really is just about the body. It's about understanding that our body isn't just there to carry us around, that the nervous system holds a lot of these things, and regulating that nervous system, finding that place of safety in the body is sometimes the very first step. It has to happen before the mind can really begin to relax. As you said, if you're traumatized by talking about it, then yeah, you may not be quite ready for talk therapy. But you have found through your journey that it really is held in the body.
Absolutely. And, I love when science sort of meets spirit, as I call it. And it's like these things that the ancients knew forever, right? Speaking about the chakra systems and different things of that nature. But, this idea that the body keeps the score, which is an amazing book, definite trigger warning for my trauma survivors out there. But if you can get through that book, it explains a lot of this so beautifully. Scientists are now really referring to the fascial system of the body, which is, this fabric that holds all of our muscles together, as the body's second nervous system.
Right.
So it's like, wow, if trauma is stored in the nervous system, now we have another nervous system, that's the body, where this is actually living. And a disruption in one part of the fascial system can, for example, maybe you were injured in your left knee, but because it's all connected, that pain actually shows up in your right shoulder. So it just illustrates the way in which, the body really does keep the score.
It absolutely does. And so many folks not realizing that start wondering what's wrong with me. And when they do feel triggered trying to talk about it, because we do want people to talk about things. Now, I don't want to downplay talk therapy. It has helped a lot of people.
Absolutely.
But then it probably is because your nervous system is just on high alert, that your whole body is in that defensiveness, and it's trying to protect you. You think, well, if talk therapy didn't work, well, it's because your body kicks in to try to protect you from those scary traumatic events and memories. And, the body, sometimes it doesn't help.
Yeah.
It's trying to protect us, but it doesn't always know how.
Exactly.
And so we have to sort of train our bodies to accept that safety. So if a person is listening to this and they're thinking, oh, that's me, I can barely talk about it. It traumatizes me to talk about things. I just don't know where to start. I feel tense all the time, even though things are fine. I'm in a safe place. I'm in my home. My family loves me. I really just don't have problems that are major, but I have this trauma from my past. And it doesn't have to be trauma on the battlefield like you experienced. It can be things in our families, things we went through that may seem small in the scheme of things. Everybody can look at an experience of being on the battlefield and think, yeah, that's pretty terrifying. But sometimes we go through things that just trigger us. And we may not be able to talk about that publicly because people will think, well, what's wrong with that? But it triggers us.
And even inherited patterns of trauma, things that we may not even realize happened to us but came down through the lineage. I think that's important.
It's very important. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's something that we're just now beginning to understand, of how, as you quoted the book, the body keeps the score. That's not just in our experience. It can be what was passed down to us, stories that we don't even know, that we are born with this trauma in our bodies that we don't realize. And people think, well, there's nothing wrong with my life. I've lived a good life, and yet I'm tired all the time. I'm tense all the time. I'm scared all the time. Have this anxiety. That may not be from your experience, and it's not a weakness. It may be inherited from the stories of your family that you may or may not know. So if someone's listening to this and wants to try to find that safety, what would be the first thing you would tell them to do?
So it is a matter of really coming back into the body, especially I think for women. We often have this story of feeling unsafe in our bodies. Maybe we don't have the exact verbiage for that, but it's finding those little glimmers of safety. And for me, it started with some very gentle practices of embodiment. So I started with very gentle breath work, not these like holotropic, psychedelic kind of breath work journeys, but just learning how to breathe deeply again.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, when you're stuck in that, fight or flight place, we're not even breathing properly. So inviting in nice deep breaths, really learning in a very gentle way to reconnect in with the body. I also started a very gentle yoga practice.
I think people sometimes hear that and they think, oh, what's breathing going to do for me? I breathe all the time. It doesn't help at all. But what you're talking about, and I believe in this so strongly, that breath work, that learning to breathe deeply, we just don't do that. And those are sometimes the switch gets flipped by trauma in our life and the nervous system gets turned on high alert. And we have to have something that, if it doesn't flip the switch off, at least dims it. We need that dimmer switch. And breathwork does that. It triggers the body. It reminds the body to calm down. It tells the brain that we're okay. And it sends those proper signals that we need. People so underestimate what they could do. And it's the easiest thing in the world. People say, well, I can't afford therapy, or I don't, it's the easiest thing in the world. It's completely free.
Absolutely.
You can do it all the time,
it's
anywhere.
A tool we carry with us. And, breath is life, right? Without the breath, we're not living. So that's a beautiful, amazing place to start. And for people curious, just really quickly, a good check-in with the breath is when you inhale, your abdomen, your belly should be getting wider, not going in. That's actually breathing in reverse, which tends to happen when we're stuck in that. So you can try that as you're listening. Just make sure that belly's widening.
And sometimes we're so vain in society. People always suck into your gut, and always trying to suck it. Well, that's not natural, especially when you're deep breathing. You have to just let it be. Okay.
Yes.
And that's okay. Get it. If you're vain about it, get by yourself or something. But absolutely take deep breaths into your gut, into your belly. And it really is just transformational. You can do this every hour or so. I tell folks, set an alarm on your phone for every hour and just a minute, 1 minute every hour or so, transforming.
Absolutely.
We mentioned the talk therapy. That wasn't right for you at the time. You needed to get to a different place. And are you familiar with the EMDR?
Yes.
What was that like for you?
That was a part of my journey. And, I know that it has helped many people. I've heard very good success stories about that. But, where I was in my journey, it did not work for me. And I don't know if that was just, still being so unsafe in the body. But, that was part of the journey. And another thing that I tried that was prescribed by the VA. And so it kind of just kept compounding, it was like, oh, here's another treatment failure, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, it does help a lot of people. It's something I hope folks will give that a try, because there's a lot of good research behind it. But, everybody has their own journey, and you do kind of have to find what works for you. And, what works at one time may not work at another. You may not be ready for that. Again, when you're holding that trauma in your body, it may not be the thing for you at the time, but it's something that has shown some really good research. I hope folks will kind of look into that. But I think what is so amazing about your story is that you didn't stop. And I know so many people that, you try therapy, you try talk therapy, you try the EMDR, you do some things that are recommended, and it didn't help. And it just adds to that despair. And what I love about what you did is you didn't stop your journey. You kept looking and exploring, and the acupuncture and the breathing, and getting yourself to a place that you find things that do work for you and get you in a place where you can find that place of safety. So what does that look like now? Because it is a journey. Like I said, we don't arrive at these things, but coming from that traumatic experience, coming from the substance abuse and the alcohol, and finding your own path to safety that is not necessarily a traditional path, and that's perfectly fine. What does that feel like now?
Well, a big turning point was when I found out I was pregnant with my son. It became, this journey is not just about me anymore. And, it became very crystal clear about these threads of ancestral healing that had to happen. And wow, what a journey that has been too. Talk about parenting with PTSD and already having like overstimulation issues. You're absolutely spot on. It's not like I woke up one day and, oh, I have arrived. It's something conscious that happens every day. I try to start my day with breath work, yoga, some movement, whatever it is, but it's essential, carving out that time for myself to return home, get quiet. And, that's also when the downloads, the messages from spirit come from, keeping me on that path. And also I do feel like it's peeling back the layers of the onion, at this point, and this is not for everyone, just putting that disclaimer out there, but, I've used plant medicines to really deepen into the healing journey, which, in my opinion, getting into those non-ordinary states of consciousness help, show us things that maybe we wouldn't be able to really see otherwise.
Yeah.
And so that has been an incredible part of my healing journey as well.
And I love the way you put that. It's not for everyone. We don't endorse that. The Learning Love podcast, I can't endorse that, but it's a part of your journey and it's part of that path that you found. And again, that's what I love is that you're intentionally searching for what works for you and you don't get discouraged, or maybe you were discouraged, but you didn't allow it. I'm sure you were at times, but you didn't allow that to stop you from finding the path that worked for you. And I love that, that you are motivated or were motivated when you found out you were pregnant, and understanding that, this is the time to really think about life. And so many people, that becomes another trauma. Yeah. When they are traumatized already, it becomes another trauma of more responsibility. What am I going to do? And it becomes overwhelming. But for you, it became a motivator.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful thing. So now you're writing a book.
Yes, I am.
Tell me about that.
So my book is Keepers of the Light, and it is really about that story of trauma to transformation, and speaks heavily to this idea that finding safety in the body is first. I think that's something that we often in this space are not talking about. I even heard it in talks about manifestation. It's like, you can manifest anything you want. It's like, well, if you're safe in your body, yes, but that's kind of step number one. And so it is my memoir, but also prescriptive self-help for other people who may be on this journey as well. And my intent, my hope is that it will really reach all the people that need to hear it, because we need healing right now. The world needs healing.
Absolutely. Do you have a timeline for when you plan to finish the book and look for publication?
Yes, it should be out hopefully by late 2026. So
awesome. That is fantastic. So when the book comes out, will you come back on the show? We'll talk about the book once it's published.
Oh my gosh, I would be so honored.
We definitely need to do that. That is great. I so appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much for your journey and for your example. I mean, we'll be excited to hear about the book once it comes out.
Yes, thank you.
And as we wrap up, there's so many people that have experienced trauma. We all have at some point. You don't get through this life without scars. You're going to go through stuff and it's going to hurt. Maybe it is something as traumatic and as obvious as the battlefield, but it may be more subtle. And it might be something that other people don't understand, but trauma is trauma. Mm-hmm. And we have to find that place of healing. And it's not always from the top down. It's not always through just what everyone says will work. You have to find a journey, have to find a place. And it does very often come down to finding safety in the body. That's something that's not been talked about enough, but that is thankfully changing. We're seeing more and more research and more information about the nervous system, about regulating the nervous system and finding that place of safety in the body that leads to the relaxation of the mind, that leads to that place of peace and safety that we really need to get to. So if you've been through trauma and are going through that recovery process, there is help. There are examples of people that are making it through that journey, and you never quite arrive. You're always going to be on that journey of finding that place of safety. So do that for yourself, because you are valuable enough to deserve that. Everyone needs to find that place. I want to thank once again Bee Doyle for joining me on the Learning Love podcast. As always, thank you to my fabulous producer, Abby Graves of Abby Graves Productions. And thank you for listening. I want you to know this program is brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation. You can find out more by going to learninglovefoundation.com. Again, thank you for listening, and love well, everyone.